Hello and welcome to this Oslo Innovation Week session, Start, Scale, Stop, Pivot and Scale. My name is Robert and today we're going to be talking about a company that done exactly what we tried to do in the title, which is extremely difficult, but we made it this time. So we're talking about a company that has really grown from a startup to being a very successful scale-up, having to go back to zero, essentially, and rescaling and doing a completely new strategy. And to talk about that story, I brought my lovely co-host and colleague, Haley. And we invited the two people of the management team in Yara Marine Technologies, one being Ina Reksten, who is the CFO, and then we flew him in all the way from Bavaria, Tom Conyordos, the CEO of Yara Marine Technologies. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. So we're going to dive right into it. And I'm going to just quickly, or not quickly, but ask you, Tom, to give us a bit of a background, a story, because Yara Marine Technologies is a company that essentially has been acquired by Yara as a startup at some point, isn't it?
Well, yes, it is. And the more questions, the better. So come in whenever something is not crystal clear, right? I think it all started with that one of the elements of the mission of Yara is protecting the planet. And Yara has ammonia and urea as two of the core ingredients to clean exhaust gases. So that goes very, very well along this mission around protecting the planet. And then the idea came up not only to focus on the chemical side, but also to integrate technology companies. So we formed a new area called Environmental Solutions. And in that area, we had the chemical side. We had stationary equipment, meaning technologies for industrial boilers and whatnot. And then we also embarked into the maritime sector. And this is where we found Yara Marine Technologies, not focusing on NOx, but on SOx. And by that time, we decided, okay, that would fit very nicely into the portfolio, and we acquired the company.
Yeah, and this is actually quite a niche market that you're in, that you were in, and you were successfully scaling, the Yara Marine, which was a startup at the time. So maybe you could explain a bit more on some key factors to how that growth journey went at the beginning.
Well, I think the most important enabler for that scale-up is just next to me. So that was one of the reasons why, by the time, when you have a startup, people are very entrepreneurial. They know the business by heart, they have the finger on the pulse. But the very second you really want to scale, and we scaled the company prox 18 times in 2 years, 2.5 years. So then you need people that have let's say, a different profile, a different capability set. And by that time, we had Ina joining, which was one of the best moves we ever made in the company, people-wise. And Ina brought all the elements with her to enable a scaling up like that.
You want to elaborate a little bit on that, Ina? What are those elements?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think that, first of all, when I started, we were approximately 80 people. And we knew that we had orders coming in. It was basically a rush. We knew that we would have huge delivery obligations the next year. So starting to set the organization, give people mandate and authority to act, I think that was extremely important. It's a bit, you don't really have time to think through and make a big plan and put all the details in place, but I think the worst thing you can do is not to do anything. So you really had to move quick, fail fast, correct, and then just have one common goal in mind. And I think that's really what the team delivered.
Very cool. And you had a superb, you just said it 18 times in 2 years. That's growth. But then it stopped and the market sort of bottomed out and things happened rather quickly. Can you, and I'll stick with you, Ina, can you elaborate a bit on just so we also understand what happened in the market? Because you were going really strong and then...
I think in order to understand that, it's a bit also to explain a bit what scrubbers do, which was our key product. And scrubbers was a result of a IMO requirement, or the International Maritime Organization, that sulfur emission needed to be reduced to 0.5 and 0.1% in imports. That meant that all this cheap fuel that vessels and commercial long-distance vessels usually run on, which is bunker fuel, was no longer possible unless you also invested in a scrubber.
Okay.
And as long as the price difference between the bunker oil and the more kind of advanced diesel marine gas oil, for example, was significant, then scrubber was a really strong also business case for the ship owners. So basically that means that a high oil price, high fuel differential means good business and then an attractive market for us. 2020, it started off well, but we have to remember this was new technology, many first-time buyers. 2019, when was all the installations and deliveries were made, this went in force from 1st of January 2020. In comes 2020, lots of new experiences. People wanted to take a step back, see how this worked, if it actually delivered on this promise, which it did. But then came COVID-19. So I think that from kind of looking into what experience and so on, COVID-19 brought massive insecurity in the market. On top of that, the oil price went really low. And it stayed low for a very long time. So with that, investment in scrubbers basically became very unattractive. So the result of that we saw in 2019 already, and also continued after that, was a very low demand for new scrubber investments.
So how did you you were explaining a bit about how this was affecting your business, and maybe you can elaborate a bit more on that, but also how did Yara Marine react to this change in the market?
I think that for the majority of 2019 especially, but also into 2020, we were really busy in just, delivering. We had taken on a huge obligation, as I said. And I think that, at the same time, I remember when I started in Yara Marine, my boss at that time, the former CEO, was also the founder of the company called Peter Strandberg. And the first thing he told me was that we have to have a subsidiary in China. And that, we spent 6, 7, 8 months, something like that, from we decided until that entity was incorporated and up and running. And today that entity has between 30 and 40 employees, depending on activity level. So I think that we were really busy on just continuing what we have started to build organization.
Delivery, really, right?
Service network, everything that comes with the deliveries. Once we saw the activity slowing down, we had to kind of start preparing to reshift our focus on the strategic level. We knew that this was probably a transition technology. We had discussed that many times. But I'm going off too long story now.
No, because that's exactly because okay, we all know we know now that of course there's been some slimming down, right? You had to refocus the organization. But after experiencing 2 years of really, really strong growth, right, you guys sort of had to take a step back, and you saw that after the deliveries, there was not much on the order books. So you, instead of sort of putting your head in the sand, which is really why this session is so interesting, you didn't, right? You said, okay, we're going to re-strategize, we're going to refocus and relook at what we're doing. And then within that, you saw, okay, we're a one-trick pony today, as I like to call it. Let's become a multi-vertical player. Yeah. Tell us about that core strategy and that shift. Like, how did it come about?
I think, as Ina was explaining, still in the beginning of 2020, focus was very much on delivery. Yeah. We had contracts. We needed to make sure that we can deliver in time, right quality, and whatnot. However, we saw that most likely outlook not so pretty, and this is just 2-3 months prior COVID really pulling in. Yeah. So in the last trip, I basically had to Oslo. We had a one-day management meeting on. So what's next? What is it we will do? How will we react? Where is it we should bring the company to? And I must say that that was still one of the best meetings I ever attended, because in one day. We took a company that you called it a one-trick pony. We made it mentally. We shifted over to a multi-technology provider. So we redefined the purpose of the company to become a technology provider to enable a greener maritime industry. Where the core technology we had so far was, of course, along the lines. But now the idea was to really expand the scope to be not only dependent on one technology for the future. So that purpose with redefinition at the beginning of 2020, that was key to now embark into the new story. So, and with that, then we started an information campaign, we printed mouse pads, and we had things on the walls. So that, because in the end, you need to shift the mentality of all people in the organization. And with that, we have embarked, and we have started on quite a number of activities to come to the point.
So just really quickly, I want to go back a little bit to the enabling a greener maritime industry, because is that something that you guys kind of from the very beginning, Yara Marine was that a core focus, a hard focus, was this enabling a greener maritime industry, or is it something that was built kind of over time with the sustainability and that kind of agenda?
I think that was at the core of the company and also the original founder. I think that he saw that there was a massive challenge and a problem in all the emissions and the shipping industry is a major polluter globally. So I think that he saw a clear purpose already then. Maybe not as defined in words, but what he always worked on was trying to clean as much as possible of the emissions. And he also had a high focus on, for example, particulate matters. So yes, I think that's kind of part of our legacy.
Point, I just want to get back to you because we've known John for quite a while. We've worked together. Your title has changed considerably over the past sort of few years, and this is sort of my link to startup feeling of the company. Does it still feel like a startup? And you've been in so many different roles, and Tom just said well, it all started with her, but the her part has been in very different areas. Just elaborate a bit on that.
I don't think it feels like a startup anymore. What we have tried to retain is that entrepreneurial spirit, and that I think is really important. When I started out getting to know Yara Marine, it was because Tom hired me in as a business performance manager. Wow. So my job was to kind of look into where we could optimize, improve, low-hanging fruits, and basically support the unit to see the opportunities. And then when we realized the magnitude of the order intake that we had in 2018, I stepped in as COO or responsible for operations, which I held for a few years. Then I had a dual role for a while, so I also took on the CFO role. And now, since May, CFO, and with that also business development and M&A area. And I think the company has come a long way. It's really become much more professional. We have really, fantastic people in the organization. I think we found key people in key positions, which is extremely important.
Yeah, cool, very good. Let's stay in that startup world, Tom. You've really made startups quite an essential part of your growth strategy, haven't you?
I think the idea was a bit that when you redefine your purpose and you embark on the journey, then what do you do? And we said, okay, let's do basically 4 things. Internal innovation. So we set the R&D team in motion to focus on topics close to core. We entered into partnership agreements. So one, for example, on wind wings, meaning big sales for vessels. Then M&A is an element. And then we were sitting there and we were thinking, what else? What else can we do in order to harvest all the intelligence, the bright ideas, the energy out there in the market under this umbrella of green technologies for maritime? And then we said, okay, let's tap into the resources of startups. And this was the basic idea that we don't know everything, right? I mean, we are just one company. But how can we embrace all the ideas that are out there in the market and bring them in the end to flourish? And one thing we know how to do is to scale. I mean, we have fantastic proven track record on that. We know how to do that, how to set the systems, the processes, the right people. So it's a very attractive proposition that we have, that we can offer to startups. Join us, and we will enable your scaling. So that's how we embarked on the idea. And then we had also quite some nice support in order to create a startup competition, which is Yara Marine X.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to get to. I love the Yara Marine X concept, and you guys launched this back in 2020 last year. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how the program went and how you went about it, how you launched it, and some key learnings from that in the end.
Yes, for us, this was multi-purpose targets, so to say. One of them was to tap into the, let's say, potential out there, but we had a second target in mind, and that was to educate our own people on entrepreneurial thinking. And now you could argue, well, guys, you've just been a startup. Why do you need to be educated on raw? And no, we've been growing to a 350 people organization, still small compared to one of the large players. However, and you feel this, the more you grow, the less close you are to your customers. And this is, I think, a very interesting observation, that people starting from a certain size get a bit disconnected to the real market, to the real customer. So we also wanted to educate our own people. Well, this is not only about tapping into a new idea, this is also to be close to the customers again. So those were the two targets. And then in the end, we went live in all the startup scene hubs that are around there. We pre-screened the ideas that were coming in, and then we had a very interesting and very good pitch event. This time, and here I must say, COVID had a positive impact because it did not need, or it could not be physical, so we could do this globally. So we had companies from the US, from India, China. So it was a very global setup. So we were able to tap basically in the idea pool of planet Earth.
Yeah.
And then we selected one company where A, we believed, obviously, very good team. B, sound business idea. And C, an area where we believe we can learn a lot. And this was around the electric drivetrain of a vessel.
Yeah. Big thing, obviously. Very interesting. So you've done an accelerator, right? Essentially in-house. And then are you going to do this again? Is it going to be part of your future strategy? Or are we going to see more of this kind of work from your company?
Definitely yes.
Exciting.
Absolutely.
Very cool. I mean, we are at the Oslo Innovation Week, right? So,
yes.
So startups and scale-ups are watching this space. So I think it's an interesting, and I really truly believe that sort of joining forces like a corporate competence and scaling force and power, right, with smaller startups can really help them grow faster. So I think it's a very interesting thing. I just want to,
Robert, sorry to interrupt. I mean, I think it's how do you say this in English? It's both sides.
Yeah.
I mean, we can offer a lot, but we also believe that the startup brings a lot to us.
Yeah.
Customer focus, finger on the pulse, entrepreneurial thinking. So there's a lot that both parties will gain out of that.
Yeah.
And I just would like to add that we now have done it once. I think the next time we will be an even better accelerator than the first time.
Yeah, for sure. Learnings.
Yes.
I have to go back to that organizational thing because and we're talking, well, obviously this session is about innovation and it's about Oslo and it's about international companies and scaling, et cetera, et cetera. So that change, because when you do one thing, right, you make a scrubber, you sell a scrubber, you install a scrubber, and you maintain a scrubber. That's sort of a very linear process. Now you're talking about wind, you're talking about other energy sources, you're talking about startups, you're talking about, I don't know, what other acquisitions you guys are going to do. Like the organizational change, it seems to me like that's not something you do in like 20 seconds. Can you just go a bit back to the challenges and how you really got your guys to be a part of that new direction? Tom is smiling already.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to pretend it's not easy. I think, but as Tom said, we were kind of, for a period, maybe over-communicating, but I guess too much communication is better than too little. really try to focus on, try to communicate that this is our new strategy, this is where we're going to go, getting people on board, which I think we really succeeded. But then you need to deliver. You can't just say that we're going to do all these things, all of these things going to change, and then nothing happens. So I think it was really important to us that we also could demonstrate that we were successful in some of these things. And then, active communications along the way. Tom introduced monthly town halls, which we now had for, a year and a half. We never
full
had that
company
before.
sort of
full company,
meeting. Yeah.
All entities in the morning, so China also
Nice.
can log in.
Yeah.
So monthly town halls, always informing of the progress and what we're actually working on. We secured the partnership or framework agreement with Bar Technology for the wind wings in April. Major milestone. Before the summer, just made it in time before the summer holidays, we made our first acquisition, which was a Swedish company called Yara Marine, which also gives us the kind of the digital competence where we kind of have mapped that. Maybe that's an area where we are a bit lacking competence. But I think that everybody was so ready for this.
Right.
Yara Marine came, they have been welcomed with open arms. They told us it's the best integration process ever.
Oh, wow, nice.
Right now, we're very happy about that. They just moved into our offices, so we're now in one place. But of course, it's also been painful. Like you said, we had to scale down the organization. We had to, let a lot of people go. Basically, did not have that competence, or we simply didn't have work for them when they work within the kind of service and installation and project areas. So both, I would say. Yeah.
Maybe to add a bit on this organizational side, I think one of the core let's say, concepts that we are discussing at the moment, we are already, let's say, starting to implement. The one of the core questions is always, how can you keep your organization customer-centric? I mean, this is the buzzword in business economics the last 1 to 3 years. How can the organization become more customer-centric? And what we decided is, okay, let's go away from, let's say, one big ship, to stay in the maritime industry, Yara Marine Technologies, one big tanker. Let's go into a concept where we have many small speedboats. So we have a speedboat acting fast on wind. We have a speedboat acting fast on fuel optimization. We still have a speedboat, by the way, on scrubbers, because the technology is not entirely down. There are still business cases where it does make sense. So the conceptual idea that we have embarked on is away from one tanker setup, slow, large, into a fleet of smaller speedboats where you have also full accountability. So the head of the speedboat makes sure that he's on the steering wheel and goes where the customer wants us to go. So that's I think, a bit on an organizational background setup. And we have embarked on the journey, and we have a management meeting tomorrow to discuss exactly that setup and then set it in full motion.
But very quickly, is there sorry, go ahead.
No, I was to say a very nice maritime illustration.
Yes, right.
I was just going to say, is there anything you would do differently in this whole organizational process?
A lot of things, of course. It's easy to say. Yes, of course, when you look back in hindsight, but I think as I said before, that, yes and no, because in hindsight, there are a lot of things, you could have done differently and better and so on. But there and then, you don't really have a choice. Yeah. And as I said, the worst thing you can do is do nothing.
Exactly.
So I rather do, act and do things and fail sometimes, but then quickly correct, rather than do nothing. So yes, it's yes and no.
Yeah.
I just want to do just a quick round into ownership, and then go and talk a bit about where you see Yara going, or Yara Marine Technologies going in the future. So just Tom, really quickly, you have a strong owner in the back. How important is that in the phase that you've been in? Because obviously it's been a very successful company before you had to pivot. So how important is that ownership?
I think it's core essential.
Okay.
Right. I mean, we are a company making a transition. Yeah. From a one technology provider to a broad portfolio, where normally what you would do if you have a portfolio of activities, you would have cash cows generating the cash you can use to fund the other businesses. So, and we don't have that anymore. Now the cash cow basically faded out. Yeah. So a strong owner that gives us the long-term vision I mean, Yara International is a company acting really according to its values.
Yeah.
And one of that is that we want to protect the planet. And that means we have a long-term view on that this needs to happen. And therefore, we are super happy to have an owner who is not only financially strong, but who also shares a long-term view and is willing to let us do this transition.
Very cool. And then just quickly, guys, where do you see this going? I mean, what's the future for YMT or Yara Marine Technologies? 5 years from now, what do we see? Go.
Are you the visionary one?
Okay, no, but I mean, in 5 years from now, the target is that we are the place to go.
Yeah.
If you are an operator, an owner, if you have vessels, the idea is that people call Yara Marine Technologies, guys, this is my fleet, please make it green. That's what we are after.
Nice. Yeah. That's a big target.
Yeah, but I think it's, and I mean, Ina said it a bit, shipping is a polluter, right? And yes, of course it is. On the positive side, the CO2 emission per transported ton is still the lowest on planet Earth.
Right.
So there are many aspects to it. However, it still is a polluter. And I mean, sharing a bit of a personal story now, when I'm also half Greek. So every year of my life I've spent in Greece on vacation. And when I was a kid, water was crystal clear, full of fish. It was an intact environment. If I go to the same place today, 51 years after, it's not the case anymore. So I think the purpose that we have, for me, it's not just, we're not just working in a company. We have a true purpose that will deliver something good for the planet. And I mean, this is one of the things that really drive me in the company, that this is more than just working in a company.
You have a purpose that's very emotional that you stand behind and that you feel very strongly about, which is really, really important to succeed. So, yeah.
So,
okay, Oslo Innovation Week is about transferring knowledge to our viewers. If you were to sort of sum it all up, and you didn't know that we were going to ask this question. So the top 3 learnings or advice you were to give, going back the last 2 years, and you're allowed to discuss this, but what would that be? If you say, okay, the 3 things that we learned or the 3 things that are most important to us are what, can you agree on 3 or is it 300 and we need another hour?
I think that, I think I started off with when you asked how this all started and so on, that finding the right people and the right people in the right positions.
Team.
Yes, and again, as you know, find people that share our purpose. That's really, I would say, is because without that you can't really drive, in the same direction. So maybe one key learning, I would say, or critical point.
Agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's people and purpose.
Yeah.
People and purpose.
So maybe not your 3 things, but I mean, if we really have to boil it down, what makes the
2
difference?
is better than 3.
Yeah.
People and purpose. And the combination of both clicked super nicely in our company, and it really made a difference.
Yeah.
And you can feel it. You can feel the spirit. If you walk into our offices, I mean, you have been there a couple of times. You can feel it's a high energy level. It's vibrant. It's people that pull in their own personal effort. So it's and I also told Ina a couple of weeks ago. For me, this is the most exciting assignment I ever had in my career.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And because of that.
People and purpose. Very
People
very
and
cool.
purpose.
Guys, with that, we've rounded a half hour. Thank you so much. I love this session. I thought it was really, really cool. I thank you for coming. Thank you for flying. Thank you for being a part of it. Also, thank you to all of our partners. Thank you for the brand project, also venture company Yara Marine X. If you want to check it out, Yara Marine Technologies on xy01.com. Thank you for now. We are going to change locations and we're going to have a bit of a Q&A session in a couple of minutes. And with that, thank you and goodbye.